All right, and welcome back everybody to the next part of this tutorial series. As you can see here, things look a little bit different. I edited some of the colors of these sprites to look a little bit better. And I made a quick change in my code with the animate function. I put this part up here to make it so that, and I changed this little line here so that I can change direction even if my character is in the air, which was bothering me. But yeah, so this episode is about how to make a level loader. And this is something that stumped me for a long time in Godot, because I couldn't really find anything that made it super clear. And so I'm hoping this video will be a little bit faster. So here's what we're going to do. So we have our scene here, right, which is where we've been making our game, but we only have one level, which kind of sucks. We want to have multiple levels, and that's important because let's say we have spikes and our character dies. We don't want to have one massive level that gets reset every single time our character dies. So let's create multiple levels. Right now, this is our level right here. You should have a tile map, your character, and that should be it, right? On your character, you have all this stuff, but this is our first level, and this may be left to Node 2D for now, but what we're actually going to want to do is call this level 1. And now what we're going to be doing is creating a, and actually I think we have to go up to here and do save scene as, because right now it's currently called node_2d.scene, but we want to save this to our scenes file as level 1. And just like that, we now have a new name for our level. So how are we going to transition between levels? To do that, we're going to need two things. One, we're going to need a scene controller that will automatically load in new levels. And then we'll need some way to activate that scene controller. And in this case, we're going to be creating an Area 2D node. Oops. We'll be creating an Area 2D node to detect when the player walks into it and then trigger the transition. So let's go ahead and create that new node. So if we come up here to scene and do new scene, we are going to create a new scene with the type of, if you hit other node and just search node, you can see that there are all these different types of base nodes. We're going to use this super simple, should be a white color, this base node, which doesn't have any 2D positional data or anything. Okay. And now what we're going to do, and actually we're going to save this. Well, first let's rename this to scene controller. And then we're going to save this scene as scene controller. That's perfect. All right. Now, how do we get our level in? It's pretty simple. There is this option here called instantiate. And what does this do? Well, if you instantiate something, you are putting this scene inside of this other scene. And so let me give you a super quick demo of that. If I come back into our level 1, so now we have these new tabs at the top between our scenes. If I click this little icon, I can jump into that scene. If I were to click on my raccoon and I were to duplicate it and just run our code, we now have two raccoons who are following the same code and, and everything. And there's there's obviously some bugs with it, but we immediately just duplicated everything. And so that's really, really useful because you're going to be making things in your game that you're going to want to use over and over and over again. Like let's say you have coins. Each of those coins will need a sprite with an animation and all that, but you don't want to have to put all of those things, all those elements on them each time. And so that's what this instantiating thing means. So this is how we're going to be loading our levels. We are going to be loading them in as different instances of those scenes. And so actually one last thing I'm going to do real quickly is I'm going to turn our character into its own scene. So if you right click on the character, you can actually save branch as scene. And I'm going to go and I'm going to click into our scenes file, and I'm going to call this raccoon. And so now you'll notice that the drop-down arrow disappeared, and we have this clacker instead. And we click this, and we open it, and this is just our raccoon in here. And so what I might want to do is I might want to click on this and reset our transform position to 0, 0. So our character always spawns at the 0, 0 location, which now means our character will be here, but we'll drag him back down. And so the reason I did that is that, let's say if I add a new raccoon to the scene, it'll appear up here, and I won't have any desync between the location. But, you know, that's not super important. Okay, so now we have our scene controller, and let's go ahead and create a script for it. So I'm going to click this folder, and I'm going to save this code to scene controller.gd and create. And all right, so this is going to be a dynamic level loader. And what I mean by that is I'm going to make it so that however I trigger it to change scenes, I can tell it what my next location is. So let's say, you know, at the end of this level, the character jumps around, gets to the top or whatever, and there's a little flag, and that flag triggers it to load level 2. So I'll put on that flag a little name that says the next level is level 2. So when I touch it, it automatically sends me to the right spot. So let's first get some variables in. So I'm going to type @onReady, which again, you don't need to understand, just know that we need it. We're going to create a new variable called current level. And I'm going to set this current level to be equal to this thing right here. So the way I can do that is I can do $, which means my child, and I'll do level 1. And now let's add another variable. Let's call it @onReady variable current level name. And we're going to set this to a type of string. So I haven't done this before, but there's this thing you can do where if you put a semicolon and then a type, you can declare what type of variable this will be. So like, for example, this level is called level 1. And now we're going to create the same thing for this for a different type of variable we'll call next level. So let's say our next level is level 2. And we'll have a next level name variable as well. This will be level 2. But this, we can't actually put this here because we don't have a level 2 in our scene. So we'll just delete that and name it later. Let's also create a variable for when we reload our level. And let's create a very important variable called advancing. And this will be either true or false. So if we want to write that, we could do, it's a type of bool. A boolean is just a type of variable that's either true or false, or a 1 or 0. Okay, so those are all the variables we're going to be using. We don't actually need anything here in this ready function, so we can leave that for now. Let's come down here and create a new function, which we will call update scene. And what we'll do is when we have our character touch the flag or whatever to send them to the scene, we'll pass along a variable right here telling it where we want to go. So we can call it next destination name. And then what we'll do is immediately set this variable that we're being set to equal our next level name. So we'll just set those to be equal. And then we'll set this variable called advancing, which determines whether or not we're reloading the level or we're moving on to the next level. We'll set that to true. And then we'll play an animation. And so this is how I handle it. What you likely don't want is for your character, like it hits the flagpole and then you watch the level immediately be deleted and then you see the new level load in. That'll be pretty janky. You don't want that. Instead, what you probably want is some sort of smooth transition between levels. So we're actually going to be running this through an animation player, so that way when the level changes, there's a transition between them. So for example, I'm just going to create a animation player node here. And then as a child of our animation player, though actually we could put it wherever we want in the scene tree, I'm going to call it a color rect node. And so this is just a simple node that's just one straight color. So then we'll click on that and we'll come over here to layout. And here under transform, we can see the size of this color rectangle. And so I'm just going to create something pretty big. I'll just do 1280 by 1280, which is a much bigger box than my screen. And I will just set it to encompass the entirety of the screen. And actually, if I run the game, let's see, I don't have that quite centered right. So this is my camera border, so I'm gonna just make it cover everything. Let's just do, yeah. Doesn't, you know, ideally you would make it so it's the exact length of your resolution, but I'm just gonna make it a little overboard. I'm using the move mode here to move it around. And I'm just gonna set its color to black. And then if we come down here to, if we come over here to visibility, you can modulate it. And here you can control the opacity of this layer, right? So we're gonna set it by default to be, the alpha channel will be all the way at 0. So each of these pixels will have an alpha value of 0, and so it won't be visible. And this is the property that we're gonna animate with our animation player. So let's come over here to animate the animation player and create a new animation, which we will call, I don't know, just like fade in, right? And so we'll click on our color rect. We'll click this little key here for modulate, and we'll do Bezier curves and create that. And you'll see that it creates different tracks for all the different things we could animate. So we could animate the red channel, the green channel, the blue channel. I don't need all those. I'm just gonna delete those. And then I'm gonna come to, like, let's say we want our fade in to be about half a second. I'll click over here on the modulate, I'll drag it all the way up, and then I'll click the key again, and now we have a new keyframe, and so we have this fade in animation, right? And because my animation ends here at 0.5, over here I'm gonna set our animation length to be 0.5. All right, and now let's create our fade out animation. So I'll come over here to animation, click new, and I'll do fade out. And I'll just do the opposite. So here I'll key it at being fully dark. Again, I'll delete the red, green, and blue. Then I'll come over here to 0.5. I will bring the opacity down, key that, and I'll set the animation length to 0.5. So now we have this fade out animation as well. And so for your game, make your animation whatever you want it to be. In a lot of my games, I have this diagonal sprite that I animate coming down across the screen, and then I have it end when it fully covers the screen, and then my fade out animation is I have it leave down the screen. And that creates a really fun effect where the when you touch the flag, you have this sweeping curtain across that then reveals the next level. And you could also, you could animate a texture coming down. Do whatever you want. Make it fit your game. Make it feel thematic. And so now I have these different animations. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this animation player to my scene controller. So the way we do that is we click on our animation player and we come over to node. And if we click on node over here in the top, we have this new category called signals. And these are really useful for connecting animation, or for connecting nodes to each other in the scene hierarchy. So there's this built-in one called animation changed. Or actually, we're looking for animation finished. And we are going to come down here to the bottom right and click connect. And once we click that, we can choose what node we want to connect the signal to. And so we're going to choose the one with our script, the scene controller. And once we connect that, now it immediately opens our scene controller code. And we can see that we have a new function down here with this little icon. And this means that it is connected via a signal. So we have this new function called onAnimationPlayer animation finished, and it passes along the name of the animation that just finished. And so here's what we'll do is in our update scene function, we will tell the animation player to start. So I'm going to put here and let's be good about this, and let's have a variable for our animation player. So I'll just create a new variable, and actually I'll show you something pretty cool. If you type @export variable, and I'll call this anim, and you put a semicolon and you set it as a type animation player, and you save, what you get is this fun thing where you can export variables. So if I click on my scene controller, come back here to inspector, I now have this new variable over here called anim, which is my variable name over here. And what I can do is I can just drag this node into here. And that's another way where I could pass it along. So I could have just done the usual, $ animation player, and I could have set it equal to this. But if you export it, you can assign it from the editor itself. And I just wanted to show that off because this is another useful way of creating connections. But either one works totally fine. So now here in our update scene, I'm going to tell anim to play my fade in animation. And so if update scene is called, it'll play this animation. And then what I want to do is when that animation finishes, and so by that point, the entire screen will be covered in black. So when this animation finishes and everything is covered, that's when I want to do my loading. So first, I'm going to check what animation just finished. So we'll do if anim name equals fade in. And so what's great is that this signal is telling us what animation just finished. So we're going to check and see if that name is fade in. Then I want to check if we're advancing the level, because I might fade in the animation for a death of our character, and I don't want to advance the level if our character dies. I only want to advance it if we're moving to the next level. And so if advancing is true, then I want to set our next level. I want to load a scene. And so here you'll type the path to get to whatever scene you want to load next. And so to make this modular, I'm going to make it so that it'll automatically load whatever name we put in here. So I put my levels in scenes. Sometimes I have a separate folder just called levels, but in this case we'll just use this. If I come over here to the bottom left and I right click on where I'm going to be saving my levels, you can copy the path. So if I paste this in here, we have and I'll put it in strings because this is looking for a variable that type strings. We're going to be loading something in this file, right? But this file path isn't complete. All this is saying is this folder. What I want to do is tell it to load a certain level in this folder. And so the way I type that out is I put in here next level name. And so this will be whatever string that is the name of our next level. And I want it to load the scene. And so we'll need to add at the end here a .tscn because this is the file format. So we're telling it where in the folder to look, what the name of the level is, and .tscn. And so that is what it will load. But I also need to tell it that I'm creating an instance. And so in Godot 4, I believe they changed this. It's now called instantiate. So I'm going to create a new instance of this level. And now what we're going to do is as soon as we load it, we're going to set our next level .visible to false. So this is going to make our level invisible. And you'll see why we do this in a second. We're going to add it as a child. So you see how this is a child or a scene controller? Let's say we load level 2. It's going to add level 2 as a child. Once we've created it, we have to tell it where to put it in the scene tree. And then we're going to delete our current level. And so our current level, the way that you delete things in Godot is you remove them from the queue. And so this is the command for deleting levels, for deleting nodes. It's it's not very intuitive, but deletes, I'll just write a little thing here, deletes current level. So now we've loaded in our next level, it's invisible, and it's a child of our scene controller. And then I want to delete whatever our current level is. And once that level is deleted, I want to set our current level to be equal to our next level. And so that way it changes. And so our next level is now called our current level. So if we run this through a separate time, it'll be correct. And then, I'm just going to copy this, and I want to set our current level name to be equal to our next level name as well. And after that, after our last level is deleted and our new level is in, this is when I will make our current level visible. And again, our current level is our former next level. So hopefully, this is a little confusing, but take some time and read through it step by step and try and understand what's happening here. And I'm sure you can figure this out. So once that's all done, we've successfully loaded in the new level, deleted the old level, and changed the names. Now I want our animation to finish. And so what's great is that if we have a level that's huge, and it takes maybe, I don't know, let's say, ideally it'll take like a couple of milliseconds, but if it takes, 5 minutes to load this level, you're not seeing the awkward loading in of assets, you're just seeing a black screen. So this is our loading screen. Once this is all done, we successfully deleted everything and transitioned and have the new level, this is when we play our next animation, which is to fade out. Right? And so once that's done, the black screen will go away, and then we're good to go. We have the next level all set up. So let's go ahead and test this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to our first level 1 again. And, this is whatever. It's okay. It's just a little test scene. I'm going to now come up here to scene and save scene as, and we'll create a new level. Let's call this level 2. And so now we're working on level 2. I'm going to right click on this and change the name as well. So now I have 2 scenes. I have my old scene and then this new copy I'm going to edit. So I'm just going to come to the tile map and I'm going to make some adjustments so we can know that we changed scenes. So I'm over here in tile map. Remember, tile set is where you define your tiles. Tile map is where you draw them. And I'm just going to, so I just deleted everything. I'm going to come down to my terrains and I'm going to click on my bricks. And I'm just going to draw a little level for our character. you know, just a little something to jump around in. Okay, so I just drew a little sample level, but now we need an actual way to trigger this whole process, right? Because right now it's just a separate function. Nothing is making it happen. So I'm just going to create I'm just going to put here in the function process. And again, I always change this to physics process delta from process delta. Reason being is that if you have lag, this is a better way to handle it. Don't worry about understanding that. I prefer to use this function. And then here, I'm just going to check if input dot is action just pressed. And let's do, so let's actually create like a new input just for testing things. This will be helpful for you. I'm going to come up here to project settings and come to input map. And I'm going to add a new action, which I'll just call dev. And I'll add this. And I'll call this, I'll just put R. So if I press R, we'll test things. So if I just press the developer action, then I want to trigger update scene, and I want to set my next destination to level 2. I need the semicolon. And let's try this out. So if I run the scene controller, we're here on our first level 1, right? Everything looks the same, but now we're running this all as a child node. If I hit R, we have a fade in and then a fade out, right? And it loads the next level. There's one problem here, and it's that our level and everything is drawing on top of everything. And I think that's because of how I set some hierarchy stuff. So I'm actually going to come over here to my color rect, and I always want this to show in front of everything. So if we come down here to ordering, there's actually a built-in thing for this. It's called z-index, and I'm going to set this to like 1000 or whatever. And so this means that this sprite will always, 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 always be on top. So let's try running this again. And again, make sure you're running scene controller. If you're running level 2, none of this logic is applying. We need to run this version with this script. So let's run that. If I hit R, we have the fade in and the fade out, and we're in our next level, right? So this is working perfectly. We can successfully node our next level. And if I keep hitting it, you'll notice we just keep returning to level 2 because that's what we're setting it to do. So great. But now I don't want to make our player press a key button to get to the next level. I want to make it so that there's a little object that they touch that takes them to the next level. And so let's do that now. So let's create a new scene. And this is how we're going to be doing everything from now on. Rather than putting them in the level itself, we're going to create these things as individual scenes that we can instance. And that'll just work a lot better. And so we're actually going to create something of an other node called an area 2D. And so this confused me for a while, and I just want to make everything super clear. An area 2D is a different type of detection system than a body, right? So we have static bodies, which are like blocks and the floor and things like that. And area 2Ds, they use a similar type of shape, but these are for detecting systems, right? So let's create this. So we have a new area 2D. I'm going to name this end area. And we have the error, as always, telling us that we need a shape. So this is true even for area nodes. So I'm going to add a new collision shape. And let's create this. And we'll come over here to shape, and we'll just make like a little circle. Yep, that looks good to me. Just something like that. And I actually might even change this debug color to something like yellow. And so now we have an area, but we need to tell it to detect when our player walks inside of it. So here's how we do that. We click on the script here, and we're going to create a new script for end area. And as always, save this in your code folder, and we'll just create that. Here we go. And then if we click on our area node and come over here to this node tab, we see we have some signals here as well that we can use. And so there's one for detecting other areas entering it, and there's also one for detecting when bodies enter it. And so a body would be our player, right? Our player is a kinematic body 2D. And so that's what we're checking for. So we'll connect this signal to itself, which is a little silly, but it's nice because then you don't have all these functions clogging your script. So we'll click on our area 2D, node, signals, body entered, and we'll connect that. And then we'll connect it to itself. And so now we have this new function, which says when this body is entered, and then we have this variable that's being passed through telling us what body just touched us, right? So if we have our raccoon, what will happen is our raccoon will walk into it, and then this will be the body that it is coming into contact with. So what we could do is, if we wanted to, like let's say we wanted to create a spring. This is just unrelated. I just want to show you how you can do stuff. I could make it so that we change a variable in that body's code. So like, for example, I could set the velocity.y to be something. So we could set the body.velocity.y to be equal to -800, and we'll actually test this as a way to test that the area is working first. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. We're going to save it into our scenes. I'll call it end area. And then we'll come back to our level, and this is actually level 2. So I'm going to come over here to the bottom left, and I'm going to reopen level 1 by double clicking. And I'll close out level 2. And I'll come over here and edit it. And make sure, again, you're not editing anything in the scene controller. This is for handling the levels that move in and out. When you edit the levels, and it's tough because they look similar, because it is the exact same thing, make sure that you're editing the level itself. So I'll come here and I'll instantiate our end area. And we'll just drag it over here. So now if my raccoon enters this area, we should test if it works by, it should launch the character. And boom, we have a spring, right? It's detecting the player walking into it, and it's modifying its code. So let's instead make it tell everything to change the level. So in our end area code, I'm going to create a new variable. Which we'll call, next level. And so we'll export it. We'll export a variable called next level. And we'll set it to be type of string. And if you export something, you can also define a starting value. So I'm going to set the starting value to be, by default, I want to test level 2, right? So now, instead of making the player bounce, although that was fun, and by the way, you can call functions here too. So like if I wanted to call like body._hurt, because this would be a way that I could tell the character that they got hurt. You could do that as well. So you can call functions. Instead, what I'm going to be doing is I don't actually even need to test the body. I'm just going to be going up to my parent, which will be the level 1 node, and then I'll be going up to its parent, which is the scene controller, and I'll be telling that, hey, it's time to update scene, right? So if we do get_parent, this will get the parent of this node, And so in this scene, it is the child of level 1. So if we get parent, it'll get the level. And then if we do that again, get parent, we will get the parent of that, which is the scene controller node. And then here is where we call the function. Update the scene with our next level, right? So now if we come to our level here, if we click on our end area and come over here to inspector, we have that variable that we can change. So here we could type whatever it is we want it to load. So I can have it load level 2. So let's come over here to our scene controller. Again, make sure you're running scene controller when testing level loading stuff. And we'll click play. It loads the next level. And it's just that simple. And so you can spice this up however you want it to. For example, you could put a little sprite here to make it clear to the player, because obviously they won't see the collision shape in the actual game. So you can add a sprite, and it could be an animated sprite too if you want to have like a flag waving in the wind. But you know, you can set this to be whatever you want. Put in a little flag, or like in my game Funk Duck, you were collecting music notes that did this. Whatever you want. And you could also add even like an audio player, an audio stream player, and you could have it play a sound when you collect it. So let's see, I've got some random sounds here. Let's do, yeah, sure. And maybe, yeah, see, just a little sound. And I'll have it play just a little sound, and oops, I'm running the wrong scene. It plays a little sound and you get the transition. So spice it up however you want. I highly recommend adding a little sprite here. And you could even add an animation to that sprite. So like, let's say we have a little icon. Let's say that when we touch this, I could make it, you know, spin up into the air. I could use an animation player node to trigger an animation that plays, and on the end of that animation, I could have it call the update scene function. So there's all sorts of things you could do here. So play around with it and make it your own. And you have a modular level loader. But now there's one last thing I just want to show you that'll be helpful. So in making this game in Godot, you've probably noticed by now that there are a bunch of different play buttons up here. There's this one, which is run current scene, and then there's this one, which is run project. So if you haven't clicked this one at any point, which you definitely have, I always do this, you'll get this message saying no main scene has ever been defined. Select one. And so you can change it later into project settings. And so this is great because I can define my scene controller node as my main scene. So if I click on my scene controller, then click this, I can select it as the current one. And then no matter where I am in my, let's say I'm working on this, I want to rotate it, and then I want to see how that looks. If I click that plus button, it'll always run this scene instead, right? So if you already clicked that at some point, if you come over here to project settings and you click run, here you can define the main scene. So you can click this folder and click your scene controller. And so now you have a dedicated button that always launches your scene controller. So yeah, so now you can just make as many levels as you want, as long as you put them in scenes here with the right name. And it doesn't even have to be level 1, level 2. You could call it Mushroom Forest or whatever you want. As long as you set on your end area in your level as long as you set it to have the right name, it'll load the right scene from this folder. So now you have a modular level system with a custom animation with a little icon, and you can just swap your levels. And yeah, so so thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.